Those who have been or currently are in the foster care system, what do you wish people knew? I got really lucky and was placed with a decent family that didn't treat me like a second-class citizen. I was family. I've seen horror stories of other places where kids starve or are mistreated in their homes. I had the best possible situation and I won't deny that at all. However, it's still so much to deal with as a small child. Remember when you were a kid and you cried when left at the babysitter's? Imagine going to live at the babysitter's house. My mom wasn't a bad mom. She was a troubled woman trying to get away from an abuser. I was in the home for about half a decade, which is an eternity as a small kid. At 10, half my life had been split between two moms and I wasn't sure what I was allowed to feel. When I finally went back home, would my real mom be upset that I missed my foster mom? Should I talk about missing my old school? The home I stayed at also had upwards of 4 foster kids at a time, who shuffled in and out. A bunch of kids from ages 3 to 16 who had been through some horrendous stuff. And there I was, a broken kid surrounded by other broken kids. It's a hell of an environment, no matter how good the parents are. We make it a point to only foster 1 or 2 children at once. We base it all on their background and how much individual attention they need beyond the norm. I hate when people load up on kids not understanding that they need extra time, focus, and love. Even if they seem fine, it definitely needs to be evaluated on a kid by kid basis. How much time and resources the parent has affects it as well. Mine was knowledgeable enough and paid enough attention to realize that my father was abusing me when no one else knew. That changed my outcome drastically for the better, as before she made the discovery they were planning on giving me to him, she very likely saved my life. That's such a blessing that she was there for you and able to keep you away from him. Do you keep in contact with her? I was pretty young when I went back home, so I didn't really have the means to. I found out she passed away a few years ago and her obituary was beautiful. She was a very loved woman. I was in foster care from when I was 3 until I was 7. Whenever I talk to people about it, they always immediately assume it was terrible. But it really wasn't. For one thing, I was moved between 5 or 6 different houses in that time, and only one of them was actually terrible. The rest of the households were really loving. They generally accepted me as part of the family, and although it was hard to get used to at first, over time it felt like they were my family. Foster parents are unbelievably nice people. The fact that they were so willing to bring these kids they've never met before in and treat them like family is mind-blowing. Most of the families even let my mom come see us, so that way we wouldn't feel bad. Edit. Sorry about not being able to reply to all of you. The reason we were moved around so much was because my older sisters were teenage drug addicts who started fights with a lot of the siblings and parents. That's the most I've been able to gather, because my parents won't tell me anymore. Again, I was moved around a majority of the time from when I was 3 to 5. After that, they separated us at the 5th house and that's where I remained until I was 7. I was moved again for about 2 months, but I don't know why. After those 2 months, I was reunited with my mom, although it took a few more years before my dad came back. Just don't be a sausage. Don't get rid of their personal belongings without speaking to them. Sometimes a ratty shirt or a torn up backpack is all they have left of home. A lot of foster youth have experienced trauma that may or may not affect their behaviors, which is something you have to acknowledge and understand. When a kid does something that seems to make little sense, analyze their actions and try to determine what is going on, rather than jumping to the conclusion that the kid is bad or that they are trying to upset you. Additionally, speaking of bad kids, when working with multiple kids, don't idolize one and speak poorly of the others. And don't make assumptions. I was a good kid. I didn't get into trouble and was quiet and got good grades. When I was older, however, they struggled to find a placement. Once I interviewed for a home, kind of, the social worker just brought me to a house to meet the family, but when the family met me, they flat out said, openly, that I couldn't live there because, as a foster youth, I would clearly try to flirt with their son, 15, 16-ish, despite the fact that I was 12, I think, and had no history of acting out. When I did get placements, because I was good, the foster parent/s would often speak poorly about the other children to me or around me. When they had guests, they would claim themselves martyrs of the bad kids, while putting me on a pedestal. While they may have thought they were helping me or raising my confidence, it did not help me trust them, and certainly didn't help the kids they freaked about. Edit, TBF. A lot of foster kids act out, even from a young age, due to abuse, or due to seeing any attraction as a form of love, and reaching out for anything. Edit, another Reddit. Just to thank you all for your support and the almost complete kindness and respect in this thread. I also want to mention a family that truly sticks in my head, because I love them, and the memory of them, and want someone else to know of their goodness, and want to bring more happiness to this thread. I stayed with a respite care family when my foster family went on vacation, and these people were the bomb. They were older, lived in a wonderful relaxing place, and were sensitive to my quirks to the point where I did not feel scared or apprehensive after the first day. I don't remember their names, but wish I could. But they told me they couldn't take in foster kids anymore. They were quite old, but every weekend they took in a new respite kid, and that they focused on kids that they thought needed more care. I was a young teen, so they probably knew it was hard for me to find a placement. So they had me for a few days, and they took me to the store to buy me foods I liked, and took me to a historical site and let me near their pets. A lot of my families must have heard horror stories of abusive foster youth, and wouldn't let me near their pets or kids, and just nourished me for the few days I was there. When I left, they told me I could call them if I ever felt unsafe in my placement, which I regret never doing. Point is, there are good foster care providers. There are good people, and they were a few of them. I was the good kid and got survivor's guilt as a result. I'd be curious if you have a similar experience. Yes, definitely. I was good and my bio sister was bad, anorexic, on diet pills/laxatives, drinking. She has not recovered and still brings up families wanting me and not her. I'm also a few years younger, which helped. I feel bad, sometimes, for my relative's success. I keep up with some of my former foster siblings and they are all doing pretty well, shockingly, but I can't help but hurt when I see them faltering. And I can't help but wonder why me. It wasn't fair to them. My mom starting doing foster care when I was in middle school. She was a single mother who already had 6 of her own kids, so it was clear to see that she loved children. When I was a senior in high school, she adopted her first foster child, a little girl who came directly to us at 8 days old from the hospital fighting drug addiction. A year and a half later, we had 2 more foster children, a brother and sister, whose parents were in and out of shelters because they kept robbing others and being kicked out. They still had visitation rights for about a year and a half before one of them came back with a burn on her arm. After that, my mom adopted them as well. Then, my mom got a call that the first child we adopted had a 1-year-old brother in the system. You probably know where this is going. We adopted him as well. About 3 years later, my mom got word that their mother had another child in prison, and before they could even ask, we took her in too. She was a little less than a year at the time, but before she turned 3 we had adopted her as well, increasing the family total to 11. Most people I talk to tell me mom is a saint. I always respond with, she's either that or insane. What I do know is that 3 months ago I watched my 13-year-old sister, who I remember holding while she wrapped tightly in a blanket shaking at 8 days old, sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow as the Dorothy in her middle school play. All I could do not to cry was tell myself that I was sitting front row and she could see me. Then, in the same week I watched my 11-year-old brother win another wrestling tournament, after which I had to flex on him to keep him humble. In the end they are all happy, healthy, and when I come home to visit they all run to give me a hug and welcome me back. If you're reading this and you're in the system now and feel like you're in a bad place, I want you to know that there are people out there who will love you and take you in as family. Life can be tough, but you're tougher. Your mom sounds like a great person. I'm glad she was able to help those kids. My husband and I were set to foster. We had done the classes, home study, everything. However, I was diagnosed with cancer and we were unable to complete. We were then denied when we reapplied. When I was in remission, I was able to join an organization that partners with foster teens who are aging out of the system to provide mentoring services. I'm in hours and I help with resumes, interview prep, job seeking, etc. I'm also just an adult who is available to listen. There are ways to support the foster system if you are unable to foster a child. I'm so grateful that I'm allowed this opportunity. God bless people like you. When I left foster care there were no resources like this. Heck, I could still use resources like this. You are one of the rare ones that actually give a damn. It's nice to see in a world that is usually just money focused. Thank you so much for watching and subscribe if you want.